Hey guys, let's wait a couple of more minutes if anybody wants to join in the last minute, and then we'll start. Guys, can you hear me? Well, Drago, can you hear me? So guys, I think we will start now. Hello and welcome to today's monitoring session where we're going to discuss how Azure Monitor and SCOM compare, and we will answer also some very important questions related to both tools. Let's first start by thanking the organizers of this event, the Microsoft 65 block, IT Point, and also Script Runner. Thank you guys for making the event possible. Let's see also shortly what we will discuss today, what's the agenda. And actually, we will start with the big question. We will discuss what is actually how are SCOM and Azure Monitor compared, and which tools should we use? Should we prefer one over the other, or can we somehow combine them both? In order to answer this question, we will take a look what actually System Center Operations Manager does. We will also have to look at some basic terms regarding cloud computing in order to answer our question. So we will just make a dive into the cloud topic. And of course, we will review what actually Azure Monitor does. And at the end, we will try to answer our question. So then let me ask the big question. And it is actually regarding SCOM and Azure Monitor, as the session title says, and the quiz question is, are those competitors or are they allies? So should we choose one over the other, or should we really try to find the best use for each tool? So in order to answer this question, let's look at the Microsoft monitoring tools ecosystem. So, you know, Microsoft System Center Operations Manager is often compared to Azure Monitor. Both tools are the main tools from Microsoft regarding monitoring. Either tool can dump monitoring data in, for example, log analytics, or for use with other features like Azure automation. So how would you decide which is the right tool? Or how would you answer the question, should I migrate my monitoring from SCOM to Azure Monitor, for example? This is the usual question because SCOM is like a very old or predecessor, and it's there for years, and Azure Monitor is the new tool. So the logical question will be, should I switch from one to the other? How to take a proper decision in regards to this? So in order to be able to answer this question, we will have to look some very basic stuff like how is today's IT infrastructure organized? That's a very important question, and we will also look into three basic scenarios. So whether you have an on-prem environment in your own data center, whether you run your workloads and application entirely in Azure, or you have like a future environment, which is not future anymore, but it's a common hybrid scenario. So before deep diving into this, we need to look some very basic terms. The cloud. What is actually the cloud? So we have different variations of the cloud. Of course, this is the private cloud, which in the Microsoft words is, of course, based on Microsoft System Center, or you take Azure to your data center using Azure Stack or Azure Stack HCI. So another implementation or variation of the cloud is, of course, the third-party private cloud, where you take all your infrastructure, your VMs, your applications, and then you dedicate them to another private cloud where they're running, and either you or another operator operates the whole environment. So, of course, this is the topic of public cloud, clouds like Azure, Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud. And recently, we hear another term very often, which is multi-cloud. So this means you have your environment, of course, in multiple cloud instances, like running parallel in Azure and also in Amazon Web Services. So let's see which of those constellations are interesting for us, and we'll start with the hybrid cloud, which is the most common scenario. You're still running legacy or on-premise data center resources, while also expanding into infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, or software as a service offerings. And this is one of the most interesting scenarios. So it's also the scenario which provides the biggest challenges, and in most cases also the best value. So majority of the companies nowadays have resources both on-premise and in the public clouds, and mostly Azure. And there is some kind of integration between the on-premise environment and the public clouds. Let's look at a couple of examples of this. Examples are, for example, Office 365, where you have your mailboxes and your Exchange infrastructure in the cloud, but you have all your accounts, your identities, you have in the on-premise Active Directory. Of course, the other example is your virtual machines, which are running in the cloud, but they're a member of your on-premise Active Directory, which is a pretty common scenario, of course. And also another common scenario for this are actually web applications which are running their front end in the cloud, but the backend still remains in your data center on premise. So let's take a look at what actually those tools represent, get to know them a bit better in order to answer the main question of the topic today. So we will start with System Center Operations Manager. And in regards to SCOM, we have a couple of questions, or I think most of the people have those questions. We will try to cover them, to answer them. So what does SCOM do? What is the future of SCOM? And what happens with my existing SCOM investments if I decide to go into the cloud? Should I get rid of everything? Should I start new? How should I proceed? And of course, is there a replacement for SCOM? Is Azure Monitor a replacement for SCOM? Let's look into this. So Operations Manager is a component of Microsoft System Center, and it's a software that helps you monitor services, devices, and many other components, everything from a single console. So it's part of the Microsoft System Center suite, and it's very attractive for existing Microsoft customers from a licensing perspective. Why is that? The reason is because if you are already running a System Center tool, like for example, Configuration Manager, then all the licenses for your SCOM agents are very attractive because you actually cover the licensing only once within the whole System Center suite, and then you don't have to pay additional licensing costs for SCOM, for example, if you're already running a CCM. So, of course, like already mentioned, SCOM is an enterprise-grade data center monitoring tool, and it's also a great cross-platform solution. This means it's able to do Linux monitoring, network devices monitoring, and also it's able to monitor also other components like URLs. It's actually a great, very powerful tool. It's highly customizable. So it will tell you which monitor objects are not healthy. It will send alerts when problems are identified. It will provide you with information in order to help you identify the cause of a certain problem. And it's really perfect for monitoring on-premise workloads like operating system databases, clusters, file shares, web applications, everything with its range. And the other benefit is it's easy to start with and to configure it. So the installation of SCOM and the first steps within the SCOM world, so to say, they're pretty easy to make. So what's great about SCOM is this concept of the management pack. So the management pack is actually where the logic, the monitoring logic is defined. So Microsoft offers all the management packs related to Microsoft technologies, but there are also a lot of vendors and also other free management packs written by some expert from the community, which gives you the possibility to achieve a very granular monitoring. Like I said, there are lots of third-party solutions for SCOM. Many of them are free, and this is due to the broad active SCOM community. A great example for this are really countless free management packs which are extending your monitoring capabilities, which are written by experts. In addition to this, there are a lot of platforms, support platforms like, for example, Microsoft Q&A, the Squared Up forums for SCOM, where you can get an answer to almost every question within minutes or within a limited time. So SCOM offers also a variety of integration options. The newest version offers a REST API, which is really great for querying information or alert management, stuff like this. Of course, SDK and a great PowerShell tooling. In addition to this, SCOM offers a lot of dashboards and visualizations, and amongst those are also third-party solutions like Squared Up, where they offer a really great front end for SCOM, where you pull all the data from the data warehouse and can present it in various ways. And last but not least, SCOM offers, of course, rich reporting capabilities. SCOM has many built-in reports or reports which are coming with a certain management packs, and they give you great reporting possibilities. So going further with the topic, we will see also it's not fair to point out only the positive sides. Let's see some of the downsides of SCOM. Of course, there is no perfect tool, some limitations of SCOM. SCOM is often described as too noisy or too chatty. This is actually related to the concept of management packs. Like we already mentioned, the management pack is predefined monitoring configuration. And most often, when you take a management pack, and you import it in SCOM, it already consists of many predefined rules or monitors, which start monitoring and alerting right away after you import it. So this is something you could expect when you start with SCOM, that when you import some management packs, you get a lot of alerts which needs tuning and further attention. So you start optimizing the management packs with their default settings and adjust it to your particular environment. So SCOM requires also some attention. You need to do all the monitoring tuning, which we just mentioned, or the so-called overriding. You need to tune the SCOM infrastructure itself, like the databases, like the management servers, etc., etc. And of course, you need to maintain the whole thing. You need to do a database maintenance. You need to update SCOM. The other thing which people don't like about it is the steep learning curve. If you can remember, we mentioned already that it's easy to start with and easy to configure it. This is of course true, and this relates to the initial configuration of SCOM. But indeed, after a certain time, you have a steep learning curve. So you get to know the health class model in SCOM. You have to have some basic understanding of management packs and authoring of management packs and how the whole thing works together. But in my personal opinion, this is also expected, and this is a normal, let's say, property of an enterprise-grade monitoring tool. So if you have enterprise-grade, then it's bound to a certain level of complexity. The next thing is you're unable to analyze data across multiple resources or interactively analyze the data. So SCOM has great reporting functionalities, but like we already mentioned, it's actually each of the management pack contains a CO data only to a specific technology. And crossing the data over or doing interactive analysis is not that great, or it's not the, let's say, the main thing SCOM does really great. And of course, like we already mentioned, interactively work with the monitoring data. So the next thing we would like to take a look at is the current version of SCOM. So the current version is System Center Operations Manager 2019 with the updates rollup 3. And let's go quickly over the what it offers. So there are some really new cloud-based capabilities and integration with Azure. You have a new HTML-based web console, a pretty modern one. You have also support for the newest technology from the Microsoft and also from the Linux world. Of course, many enhancements regarding Linux monitoring and also many auditing capabilities, like who did this, who reset the monitor, who changed the management pack, who did this overrides. There are also countless security and performance improvements. Also, let's really shortly take a look at how SCOM looked over the years. So I will start. There is a version which is not on this roadmap, but I will start with a bit more recent one, SCOM 2012 R2. There was, of course, SCOM 2007 R2 prior to this, and the Microsoft Operations Manager, or MOM, 2005, which won't mention because it's really an old thing. So SCOM 2012 R2, then afterwards we have the SCOM 2016, which belongs to the so-called long-term servicing channel. You understand right away what this is. Microsoft decided to do this long-term servicing channel because they wanted to differentiate between some the so-called semi-annual channel, where they released two different versions, like 1801 and 1807. And after some years, I think they realized that's not the best approach while developing SCOM. So this has been discontinued now. But still, there are customers who are running those versions. And of course, they have the possibility to upgrade to a long-term servicing channel or main edition version. Like we already mentioned, we have currently SCOM 2019. And the interesting is we are now awaiting for the new version of SCOM, which should come with the Windows Server vNext, and this will be the Operations Manager vNext. It should come in the following months. I'm really curious about what it would have to offer, how it would look like, and what are the new things there. And last but not least, there is something which most probably most of you haven't heard, and this is the so-called Aquila. So what is actually Aquila? This is very, very interesting, and I think a pretty new thing. Aquila is still a big secret kept from Microsoft. What we know so far, I have dedicated a slide for this, what we know so far about Aquila. It comes from, let's say, an article which has been written last year, if I'm not mistaken. This is the article. It's the one and only public article which mentions this project. And this, the article describes, of course, how it will most probably look like. So let's review the main assumptions. So it will be a Microsoft managed instance of SCOM in Azure. So immediately, what I think of here is actually I will get rid of all of the infrastructure maintenance related to infrastructure, updates related to the infrastructure. It will support container-based deployment, which is a really, really cool thing. And it will be compatible with SCOM running on premises. It will also support migration from on-premise SCOM to the cloud SCOM or to this managed instance called Aquila. A very interesting thing, it will integrate with Azure Monitor. I have highlighted this in red because it should ring a bell to you about what SCOM actually does and what SCOM represents when actually an integration with Azure Monitor is planned. And this comes from me. If there is a tool like Aquila, I think it will preserve all your existing investment in management packs, which is really a great stuff. So I am really going to look forward to Microsoft announcing this in public because it will be a really great stuff. And it also comes to show us that Microsoft is further developing SCOM and all the SCOM variations. So SCOM has a really great future, opposite to what was actually, let's say, mentioned multiple times throughout the years that SCOM will be replaced with another tool or SCOM will be replaced by Azure Monitor. So I think it's part of the answer we're looking for today. And now let's see the competitor or the ally of SCOM, Azure Monitor. So what is actually Azure Monitor? First, if you are new to Azure Monitor and would like to get to know it better, there are a couple of great sources of information. And number one, I would say, is the Microsoft Docs documentation about it. Microsoft is really trying hard to keep it updated, to keep it very, very detailed, so that everybody can benefit from this. And there is also another great resource. It's actually a book written by some of the, let's say, the renowned MVPs in the area, which are doing Azure Monitor, like Stanislav Zelaskov, Tao Yang, Kevin Green, and the other guys. And it's called the Inside Azure Management Book. Both resources can give you all the information you need in regards to setting it up, operating it, and all around Azure Monitor. So let's take a look at Azure Monitor and what it actually does. So it's a cloud-based end-to-end monitoring solution, and it allows you to collect granular performance and also utilization data from not only your cloud, but also from your on-premise resources. You can analyze it, and you can also react or act to data proactively. You can prevent and solve issues using Azure Monitor. It leverages not only the real-time capabilities of Azure Metrics, but it also leverages the power of log analytics. And those data it's fed into the variety of insights, visuals, or analysis tools. So this gives you a possibility to get a really in-depth picture of your cloud environment from a single location. So the main capabilities, you can detect and diagnose issues across applications and also dependencies with application insights. We'll see right away what this is. Of course, you can correlate different issues at infrastructure level with insights for virtual machines, insights for containers, SQL, network, etc., etc. There are many different insights, which we'll see now what they actually do, which can help you with correlating data. Of course, you can take automated actions using smart alerts or automated actions. And you can drill down with log analytics or analyze your data if you need to do a troubleshooting or in-depth diagnosis. Last but not least, Azure Monitor offers really a great visualizations with Azure dashboards and also with workbooks. So, what data does Azure Monitor collect? So, data is one of the types of data is application monitoring data. It's actually the data about your the performance and functionality data about your web application. Of course, guest OS monitoring data. It's data about the operating system you're running, either in the cloud or on-prem. That's important, on-prem. So you have, of course, also all the Azure resource monitoring data, which are coming from your Azure resources. And you have also Azure subscription monitoring data, which is actually data regarding your subscriptions in Azure, and all the Azure tenant monitoring data. Operation of your tenant level Azure services, such as Azure Active Directory, etc., etc. So Azure Monitor, then, after collecting this data, it organizes this in two main types. The first type of data are metrics. So metrics actually, they give you the metrics for every resource in Azure. They're categorized by subscription, by resource group, and by, of course, resource type. They represent system performance and also status data. They have values, they are viewable, so to say, and you can also look at your performance of your application, databases, your CPU usage, everything you can think of related to your resources. The other type of data, which is out there, is actually the logs. So the log data is collected by Azure Monitor, and it can be analyzed with log analytics using queries. And you can quickly retrieve, consolidate, analyze all the collected data. You can create and test different queries upon your data using a custom query language. Or you can also directly analyze the data using different visualization tools. So metrics are useful because they are representing some aspect of your application or system at a specific point of time. And of course, for historical references, this is very important. While logs are actually telemetrical data organized into text record that will provide you with additional context and help you analyze and obtain the full picture or do a deeper analysis and trending, of course, over time. So let's see the architecture of Azure Monitor. How is actually what happens behind the scenes. So with Azure Monitor, you have what you see on the left side, sorry, those are all the sources of monitoring data. So this could be application. The source can be your infrastructure. The source can, of course, be Azure services, any Azure services on your Azure platform, or you can have also a variety of custom sources. Like we already mentioned, this data from all the sources is collected and it's put together into different type types of data, metrics or logs. And the most important thing is actually, for me, on the right side, what you can do with the data, how you can interact with the data. We already mentioned about the insights, so application insights. This gives you the availability, performance, and usage data of your web application, no matter if it's hosted in the cloud or on-premise. That's very cool feature. Of course, container insights. It will monitor the performance of your container workloads, which are actually deployed to a Kubernetes cluster and which are sourced on AKS in Azure. Of course, VM Insights. It monitors your Azure virtual machines at scale, and it analyzes its performance, the health of it, no matter if it's a Windows or Linux operating system. You have, of course, different ways of visualizing the data. So you can use dashboards, you can do a Power BI integration, which looks very cool, or you can also use workbooks. Like we already mentioned, the data can be analyzed using two main tools, each for each different type of data, Metrics Explorer for all the metrics, and also Log Analytics for all the logs. You can also interact with the data or respond to certain events or anomalies by generating alerts, using action groups, or you can also, for example, if you have performance issues, you can use the auto scale feature where your virtual machines are scaled automatically depending on the performance. And of course, Azure Monitor offers a lot of integration options, like, for example, Azure Event Hub, which is an event integration service. You can use also logic apps, which allows you to automate different tasks and processes using workflows. And of course, you can ingest the different data over the multiple APIs which are available to read or write metrics in logs from Azure Monitor, in addition to accessing the alert data. So, and now, after we have reviewed what actually Azure Monitor is, let's take a look how both tools compare. That's very, very important, and I think it's the essence of today's sessions. So, let's start with the fact that there is an article from Microsoft Docs article, which is called Monitoring Platforms Overview, where Microsoft tries to compare both tools. I'll show you, this is how the content of the article looks like. So both tools are compared regarding infrastructure requirements, data collection, health monitoring, how the data is analyzed, how alerts are generated, what they contain. It's really a great article. When you get the presentation of this event, then you find all the articles and all the links at the last slide. So take a look at it. It's really very, very informative. There is also another article which talks about SCOM versus Azure Monitor, and it's called the Hybrid Cloud Monitoring. And what I find great about this article is that it offers you a great table where both tools, Azure Monitor and Operations Manager, are compared in regards to different requirements, infrastructure requirements, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service. It's really very detailed stuff, and you really get a much broader and clearer picture after you read this. But so let's take a look how the basic terms in SCOM and in Azure compare. You have this nice table. I have actually stolen it from a Microsoft presentation from Warren Kahn a couple of weeks ago, because it really represents how the terms on both sides look like. So regarding visualization, in SCOM you have the so-called views, and in Azure Monitor you have workbooks, dashboards, or resource overviews. In SCOM you have, and in both you have, of course, the alerts, And the assessment in SCOM is done by the management packs, and in Azure Monitor by the so-called insights, which we already looked at. Analysis is done in SCOM by taking data out of the data warehouse and representing in different reports. And of course, analysis with Azure Monitor, the best way to do is to use log analytics or the custom query language, which is out there, using different queries to analyze it. And of course, regarding application monitoring, you have the application performance monitoring in SCOM and application insights in Azure Monitor. So let's take a look at some other consideration regarding this comparison. Some stuff I have put together because they're, in my opinion, also important. So SCOM, it's concentrated on a specific monitored object. So you have, in each of the cases, you have a monitoring object, or everything is represented as an object, which is a member of a certain class in a certain class model. Azure Monitor, on its turn, it provides a more holistic view of your monitored environment, or it's able to provide you in an easier way the bigger picture and the overview of your environment. In SCOM, you have the concept of management packs. So you import a management pack, and it starts right away monitoring your environment. It has predefined discoveries, it has rules, it has monitors. But you need to tune it to adjust it after you have imported it. So this is what we already discussed about SCOM being noisy and having additional requirements about tuning. Azure Monitor, on its turn, you start with nothing, and you have to set up what you need in order to cover your monitoring requirements. So you only configure what you need. This can be a positive and a negative depending on what your goal is. But the different approach, for example, we're working somewhere, in the first case, I just import the management packs in SCOM, and then I go to the different specialists and ask them, guys, do you like what you see? Do you need some adjustments of your thresholds and stuff like this? And in the second case, in the case of Azure Monitor, before setting anything up, I need to go to the customer and tell him, dear customer, we now need to consider the monitoring requirements, what needs to be done. And after defining those, then we can really configure everything. So you see the differences on both sides in this comparison. And there is also another slide on this topic. In SCOM, like we already said, it's very difficult to analyze the monitoring data. Each workflow in each management pack is independent without any visibility to other workflows. So it's difficult to implement a certain logic across the management packs. With Azure Monitor, all the log data is collected by Azure Monitor, and it's analyzed with queries in order to retrieve, consolidate, and analyze all the data. So you can create and test queries in the portal. You can also directly analyze the data if you want to, using the different tools. There is also one more aspect. So SCOM has, in certain cases, challenging custom data analysis capabilities. So we already covered this. Besides the pre-configured reports, it's hard to put all the stuff together and get a bigger picture. And of course, Azure Monitor offers this really interactive and flexible way of analyzing all the data. So before jumping to our answer, let's review 4 very typical scenarios. So monitor on-premise environment with SCOM. We already covered much of the stuff here. So in most cases, you have already SCOM installed in your data center. So it's really a great thing. You get very granular, very detailed information. And of course, SCOM is very highly customizable. So you can alter your management packs. You can really do anything in SCOM, monitor anything using a management pack, either out of the box, or you can create one. There are really great third-party solutions like management packs, like connectors or different add-ons which enrich the capabilities of SCOM. And of course, you can always do custom management pack authoring for the stuff that's not there. And there are tons of community solutions, and I really mean tons because the SCOM community is really very, very extensive. The next scenario we have is monitoring cloud environments with SCOM. What has SCOM to offer here? So you can monitor your cloud-based VMs either directly by configuring your agent to talk to your management server or over the so-called gateway. That's not an issue at all. So you can manage, also monitor with SCOM your Azure resources using your Azure management pack, which is a great way to get a visibility in Azure from SCOM. Of course, the same applies to Azure SQL databases. There is a management pack for this, like you see, and Microsoft Azure Stack Hub management pack. Another great thing is the Office 365 management pack, which will now come in the most recent version, which will provide you a great insight in your Office 365 environment. So let's look at the same use cases, but from the Azure Monitor perspective. So monitor on-premise with Azure Monitor. Of course, you can do this. You can leverage all the great tooling with Azure Monitor, either by directly connecting the server using the agent, or use the other options, enable a server for Azure Arc. Azure Arc is actually a technology which offers, let's say, simplified management, easier governance for your Windows, Linux, SQL servers, Kubernetes clusters, and everything across your data centers. And also in all your cloud environments. It's also, of course, multi-cloud aware. The other use case we have is, of course, monitor Azure with Azure Monitor. And here the picture is pretty clear. So we have a very easy setup. We have a minimum maintenance. It's pretty clear. Microsoft takes care of all the infrastructure. You can directly start onboarding customers into Azure Monitor. There are no hidden costs, so you only pay for what you really use. There is also a certain level of management capability there, which allows for easier management. You have great modern interactive dashboards, and of course, powerful querying options like we already saw. And of course, you have different alert management, integration, and automation options as a result of your monitoring data. So this being said, let's jump to the last part of today's presentation. It's actually to answer the big question. What's the answer? Are there competitors, like we heard many times, or can they work together? So I would like to present you with three quotations first before answering the question. So 2 monitoring tools for Microsoft for each of the primary hosting scenario. What is primary? For SCOM, it's on-premise, and for Azure, it's cloud. So I'll read this quotation. In a way, I feel this comparison is a bit unfair, like comparing apples with oranges. Those are two products can work together and overlap in order to eliminate monitoring gaps in your environment. Really greatly said. And there is also a cliche regarding this. SCOM and Azure Monitor are always better together. This being said, there is a great picture, and there is a love story which comes out of this. Why use them both? So Azure Monitor is, of course, a way to work around the limitations of Operations Manager. It has a better analysis, data analysis options. It has an improved alerting experience when using Azure Monitor alert management solution. Can have a specialized tool for each environment type. So on-premise, like we said, SCOM, and cloud covered with Azure Monitor. So each tool does the best it can, and still both tools integrate over the many integration options and management packs. The next thing is you can have your advanced monitoring logic, which is not there with Azure Monitor. In these certain cases where Azure Monitor is just not enough. And there is another slide which will give you another, let's say, arguments for this. So you get more useful data, having data from two tools. Of course, Azure Monitor will help you reduce your administrative overheads. And of course, the best strategy is to use Azure Monitor there where you really need it, where SCOM is not that powerful, and of course the other way around. Use SCOM there where Azure Monitor has a shortage. This being said, you achieve a certain level of monitoring resiliency, so you would use both of them. So if an issue happens, having them both will assure that your problem will not get unnoticed. So you really track down where the issue is. And of course, the great thing is you can use both tools to leverage Power BI and to visualize your data. So you can have really some nice dashboards, no matter if the data comes from SCOM or from Azure Monitor. So guys, thank you for being patient with me. I think we covered all the slides now. If there are questions, I'll be glad to have them answered. I hope you were able to get a picture how SCOM and Azure Monitor compare, which one is to use. Do you need to choose one over the other? I think the answer is pretty clear. And wish you good health and stay safe. Thank you and have a nice weekend, guys.